So welcome everyone. This is a unique opportunity for everybody. We wanted to invite you to this webinar to talk about a few different things. Primarily, of course, on the screen, how to improve your customer experience and reduce the risk of fraud at the same time. So we'll jump right into it. First off, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction. Jeff, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for everybody for joining us. So my name is Jeff Young. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Ivrnet, and I've been in media and technology for over 22 years. I grew up on a farm in southern Alberta, but I soon realized that I was a lot better at computers than I was at farming, so that's what landed me here. I'm married and have 3 really great kids. So Ryan, I'll let you introduce yourself.
It's awesome. It's true. The 3 awesome kids. All right, we're going to click this over to me. So my name is Ryan Dowson. I'm sales executive here with Ivrnet, and spent about 22 years in the sales and business development, various different industries, most recently in software and technology. And I'm married, and I have 1 little diva who is 8 going on 18, and that is a crazy picture of me. I don't know what's going on with the eyes there. There we go. Much better. All right. So, goals for today. Should take us roughly 20 minutes to cover the material that we're going to discuss today. By the end of this, you should have a better understanding of how the contactless payment evolution might affect your business. We're also going to look at the implications of taking payments over the phone, the risks that are involved, and we're going to have a workable solution that we're going to talk about as well. So if there's time at the end, we're also going to try and bring peace to all nations on earth, but I'm not making any promises. This is time sensitive. So to start off with, Jeff, what's a common question that customers ask a business when they order a product or service over the phone?
Thanks, Ryan. I think here's an example that comes to mind. Can I just give you my credit card number over the phone? I'll have a colleague pick up the order later this afternoon. You know, it would sure be a lot easier if I could just pay for it now. So I'm sure most of us have been asked this at one time or another, and I'm also certain that some of us have even asked it ourselves. And funny enough, this actually happened to me yesterday. I had ordered some car parts, and the trucking company who was going to be delivering them asked me for my credit card over the phone so they could release the parts to me upon arrival. And so, you know, we realized that in most situations, a customer is going to pay at the till, at the cashier, if they're in store, or they're going to pay online. But there are times that it's more convenient for both the business owner and the customer to just make a payment over the phone. And with COVID restrictions becoming more commonplace, the need for another contactless payment option really has never been higher than it is today.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Jeff. And that's primarily why we're, excuse me, why we're here today. We want to discuss some of these things, and we want to discuss the need to be aware of when we're posed with this question and what those implications are. So your customers want to trust you, and why shouldn't they? If you accept credit cards, your customers automatically assume that you have a secure process that's not going to expose them to fraud. But how would you ever know that you expose them to some kind of fraud? So for most of us, when we go out into the world and we're hiring people, bringing people onto our teams, sometimes there's a difference between what we hire and what we end up with. So generally speaking, you do trust your employees, and you vet your new hires and set out procedures for them to follow to keep them and your customers safe. These days, background checks are kind of the go-to for almost every organization that's hiring, because it's a due diligence process that gives us peace of mind when trusting a stranger to handle critical aspects of our business. So the question becomes, how accurate is it? Not as accurate as we would all like. The Professional Background Screening Association has openly stated that there is no single government database containing complete and up-to-date records regarding a person's criminal history. So these information gaps can be exploited by people. So I'm going to share with you a story here It's about one case in particular that was a fraud situation. And it was in 2003. And I knew someone that had their credit card information stolen at the time. They had a small business. They traveled all over Western Canada using their personal card to book hotels, of course, because they wanted to try and get the points. The theft of their information occurred somewhere along the ways when they were going through this. And it not only affected their credit, but whoever it was that stole the information also managed to gain access to their bank account and stole another $1,200 just to add insult to injury. So bank investigators, when they were looking into it, eventually said that the information was most likely stolen when booking those hotel rooms over the phone. You're giving your credit card information and other personal information over the phone to someone to secure a room, and you really don't know who that person is. So the fallout from all of that required, of course, new cards to be issued, credit watch on several different accounts, getting random calls from the bank and from the merchant providers to verify even some of the most mundane transactions. And it was a massive pain all over. And truth be told, that person was me. So I speak from a very personal place on this, and I understand the impact of it firsthand. So even though there's been some changes and things have happened over the last little while, and we've tried to improve things, this is still a tremendous challenge for us today. So there's lots of advancements in security technology over the last 17 years since that incident happened. The advent of EMV chips, for example, has helped to stem the cases of card present fraud. However, card not present fraud still remains a major and very costly issue. So a couple of stats here we're going to look at. In 2018, there were 7.9 million people in the US that were victims of card not present fraud. Card not present fraud in Canada is about 76% of the total fraud in the country. And with over 270,000 reports, credit card fraud was the most common type of identity theft last year, and more than doubled from 2017 to 2019. That's 2 years it doubled. That's a scary statistic. Now, this can happen to the best of us. It happens to all businesses, large or small. Excuse me. Yahoo, First American, Facebook, Marriott, these are all companies that are well established. Now, how much do you think that they spend on data security and background checks on a yearly basis? Yet somehow they still manage to land on the top of the list for some of the worst breaches of all time. So this tells us that fraud prevention requires a systemic, process-driven change to the way companies handle and interact with sensitive data. And just for the record, the cost for Facebook after their breach in order to beef up their security was about $3.7 billion. So in 2006, there were great strides were taken to help companies that accept credit card payments. And this was done through the creation of an independent council spearheaded by American Express, Discover, JCB International, MasterCard, and Visa. And it was formed to help merchants and financial institutions understand and implement standards for security policies, technologies, and processes that protect their payment systems from theft of cardholder data. So Ivrnet uses these same standards in the creation of its solution. Exposures for non-compliance for PCI DSS. Of course, there's always a flip side to everything. This can extend well beyond monetary penalties. So we think, in terms of fines, they can vary anywhere from $5,000 to over $100,000, and those fines will continue to be applied for as long as an organization is out of compliance. So even going beyond that, beyond the monetary penalties, think about consumer confidence in your brand, for example. Fines can scale dramatically depending on the number of users affected as well. And as well, it can impact reputational risks, which we can classify as affecting capital, share valuation, market share, social capital. So there's kind of a ripple effect of damage that can occur from the situation. I really hope that you say no to this question. But if you are taking credit card numbers over the phone, is your staff writing them down? What do they do with those little slips of paper afterwards? How are those breaches being tracked? And are you confirming with each employee that this information is being destroyed? Our solution to help mitigate risks and protect consumer confidence is called Telepay. And it's a PCI DSS compliant tool that bridges the gap between data security and customer experience. So this is focused on reducing any risk of fraud between the transaction point and the company. It's secure, it's convenient, and it will significantly reduce any administrative costs, which we'll get into a little bit later. Jeff will talk about that a bit. We also have the ability to mitigate the risk of chargebacks by having the customer state their name during the payment process, which is then recorded for future proof should it ever be needed. So there are two basic ways that we can implement a Telepay solution. We can implement it as a standalone solution, or we can do it as a fully integrated with existing systems that you may have and existing processes that you may have. It can flow right through into any existing platforms that you have running. If you don't have anything, then we have the standalone piece will have the interfaces and all the other pieces that you would need to run it. So there's a lot of variance and customization in how this can go together. And like I said, Jeff will talk about that in a little bit. So just to take a step away from it for a second, why did we go through this process and what is it that drives us to create this type of a product? Well, it comes down to freedom of choice from a consumer, from a business, and we believe that businesses should not be limited, that there should be no fear of identity theft or fraud, and that every transaction is structured to protect sensitive information. And we deliver this through a platform that's easy to use, extremely secure, builds brand loyalty, and is accessible from anywhere on the planet, even without an internet connection. Now more than ever, establishing a personal connection with your customers is absolutely critical. And we view Telepay as being the next logical step in the contactless payment experience. It allows you to stay connected with your customers throughout the entire payment process. And probably more importantly, it even allows you to continue the conversation post-transaction. So why is that so important? The post-transaction opportunity is a great chance for you to increase brand loyalty. So if that's the nature of your business, this is a great time to do it. You can engage with customers. You can discuss about upselling opportunities. You can look at, ask them for product reviews, engage them, enroll them into a loyalty program, customer satisfaction surveys, special offers. They're in a state where they're happy and they're open to suggestion and new ideas. It's a great time to take advantage of it. So a few stats surrounding post-transaction brand loyalty. 86% of customers say that an emotional connection with a customer service agent would make them continue to do business with the company. 77% of consumers say they favor brands that ask for and accept customer feedback. And 93% of consumers are more likely to make repeat purchases at companies with excellent customer service. So to talk a little bit more about how the mechanics of Telepay works, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. When we work with an organization, we provide payment solutions that align with their business processes and goals. And so some organizations like the high-touch payment option that involves their customer service agents for the very reasons that Ryan just discussed. We find that other organizations prefer to minimize staff involvement for a highly efficient way to make payments. And so they just direct customers to an automated attendant. So, the setup pricing that you're going to see on these slides, is based on typical installs. We wanted to frame it a bit and include those with this because that's often a question that organizations have. Since we do have several not-for-profit organizations joining us on the webinar, I did want to just mention that we also have some special non-profit pricing that can be discussed further on a call. So with our basic contact center solution, what we do, and you can see it from the workflow on the screen, is we integrate with an existing contact center's workflow. Customer would call into an organization to purchase a product, or maybe they've got some questions with an agent and decide to increase their subscription or purchase another product. So let's say that they're calling in to sign up for a new cell phone plan. The customer service agent would create an invoice, either using Telepay's invoice module or within their own billing software. And then the agent would then transfer the customer into the Telepay automated attendant to make a payment. The agent would then leave the call, and the customer would enter their unique identifier access code along with their credit card information. So the payment would be processed through whatever the organization's merchant services provider is, and the transaction results would be recorded within Telepay software. And then the automated attendant would also inform the customer of whether the payment was successful or not. So in this scenario, following the transaction, the call could either end, or the customer could have the option of being transferred back to an operator or a previous agent. So that's what we would call, our basic call flow integration. Our advanced call center integration is similar to the one I just mentioned, only in this scenario, the call is initially routed to Ivrnet and then to the organization's phone line. So Ivrnet would take that first. They'd be on the line with the organization's line. And when the agent transfers the call into Telepay, the agent would actually stay on the line and can communicate back and forth with the customer during the transaction process. So when the customer enters their payment information, the what we call the dial tone multi-frequency, you may have heard it as DTMF, is muted so that the agent doesn't hear any payment details. And again, that ties in with the PCI compliance piece. So once the payment's been made, the agent remains on the line to answer any other questions that the customer has. The reason why this particular integration is so popular is it's very much like an in-store experience at the cashier, providing all the post-transaction opportunities that Ryan mentioned earlier. Plus, the agent will know if the payment was successful during the call and can assist along the way should the customer have any issues during the payment. Maybe they need to go get their credit card, or maybe they're having a hard time, like myself, reading the credit card and need to grab their glasses. So this solution is also very popular as well with call centers, collection agencies who are compensated on closing deals or collecting on overdue accounts. Of course, we can also do customized Telepay integrations where an organization may have multiple locations and business systems. So lastly, our out-of-the-box Telepay solution provides customers the ability to call into Telepay and make a payment. So they would call the telephone number that, for example, they see on an invoice, along with, there may be other payment options that are listed on the invoice, but they would call into the Telepay number. And it's really popular for those customers that have an account already set up with an organization and receive monthly invoices for a service or product. So examples of this would be industrial supply companies where maybe the contractor would call in to make their monthly payment, utility companies for things like electricity bills, water bills. And we also have a number of homeowner associations that use this particular solution for their annual fees. And as I mentioned earlier, whether your business prefers high touch or no touch engagement with your customers, our solutions really can align with your needs. And so I did just want to, for reference, just show you an example of what our Telepay out-of-the-box invoice software looks like. This solution is used where we are not integrating directly with an organization's billing system. And as I mentioned earlier, the agent would basically create an invoice for the customer or service that's being purchased. And one of the nice features of this is that the customer doesn't need to remember the amount that is owing when they call in or transferred into the Telepay auto attendant. The amount will actually be already stated on the auto attendant of what they're paying for. So that's something that is very convenient for folks. And again, this is a no-touch solution, but provides a lot of efficiencies to free up your staff, so they're not having to speak with customers, taking payments. Instead, it's all automated. So Ryan, I'll throw it back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. So to recap, in a nutshell, you can give your customers another contactless payment option using a bolt-on solution. which of course Telepay, and we recognize that the PCI DSS compliance is definitely an arduous and expensive process for a lot of folks, and we've already done that background work for you. So, I mean, obviously, this is going to save you a lot of time and money from having to create your own PCI DSS environment internally, and of course, it eliminates all the cumbersome practices like shredding little pieces of paper containing handwritten credit card numbers and things like that. So, credit card numbers are only exposed to the customer, and the payment is processed in real time. So both the customer and agent are immediately notified of the transaction status. And lastly, with Telepay's advanced call center integration solution, agents are able to continue the conversation with the customer after the transaction for that full cycle customer experience. So again, it doesn't really matter if you're looking for something that's going to be very simple, like a basic integration where you don't need a lot of fluff, you don't need that post-transactional interaction. There's some basic solutions that are in place that we have, or you can go all the way up to a fully customized integration with multiple locations, with that post-transactional touch on there. We can build in the auto attendant features. There's any number of different options that you can have as part of this in order to fit whatever your business use case is or whatever your business needs. And this can reach across many different departments within your organization as well. So definitely something to consider. The options are there. So that brings us to the end of the informational piece of our webinar. So I would like to extend a very warm thank you to everybody who has participated today. And for our participants, I understand that this is a very important decision. It's one that doesn't get made overnight. It's one that involves many other stakeholders as well. And we recognize that. So we want to help you along that journey. And we're here for that reason. If you have questions, if you have concerns, please reach out to us. And as part of this, we'd like to extend a free, no obligation analysis, maybe offer some suggestions on the best way to integrate Telepay into your organization. We can take a look and see if we can find some pain points where this might be a good fit. So on that note, I will open it up to some Q&A. I'm going to leave the contact information up there. And if you want to write it down or take some notes, feel free to do so, and you can reach out to us afterwards. So let's open up the Q&A and go from there.
Yeah, while we're doing that, Ryan, maybe what I'll do is, we often get questions, some common questions. And so as we're waiting for folks to ask any questions that they may have, one question is, can Telepay process refunds? And yes, it can. Another question that we often get is, can you accept US dollars and Canadian dollars? And again, we can do that. We are set up with a number of existing integrations with merchant services providers in both Canada and the US. And so any transactions would be routed through the appropriate merchant service provider. Some of the other things that I guess we could go through is, how long does it take for Telepay to get up and running during an installation and implementation? And that answer, obviously varies based on the complexity. If it's with one of our, let's say, not-for-profit that's using our central software, community management software, it could be within a couple of weeks to have everything up and running. And then with organizations that have, more of a workflow tied in with their call centers, it typically is 4 weeks, perhaps longer, depending on how complex it is. So another question that I guess we can answer as well is, how is the pricing? So the pricing, the way it works is we do an install. So there's some upfront fees that are associated with that to getting Telepay operational for your particular use case. And then there's a monthly fee to have access to the software, to be able to use the Telepay features, log in, create invoices, etc. And then basically it's just by usage. So the number of transactions that you have in a month would be charged out, and that varies depending on your volumes. So for those specifics, obviously, everybody's a bit different. We'd want to dive into your specific needs and outline that. What we do is we do a statement of work, and so that we can kind of map out all the timelines, and everybody's really clear in terms of what their deliverables are from an organization. and what Ivernet's deliverables are, so that we hit those targets. So if there's any other questions that folks have, please jump in. Doesn't look like I see any here, Ryan. So hopefully we've answered everything.
I'm guessing we did a pretty good job of answering all the basic standard questions.
Yeah. No, we appreciate everybody's time. We know it's valuable, so we wanted to keep it fairly to the point today. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody. If there's nothing else, no other questions, we'll sign off, and we'll be, I guess, in touch with folks. If there's any additional questions, feel free to email us, and you can follow up afterwards if you think of anything.